Have you prayed? When the wind turns and asks, in my Father's voice, have you prayed? I know 3 things. 1, I'm not finished answering to the dead. 2, a man is 4 winds and 3 fires. And the 4 winds are his father's voice, his mother's voice, or maybe he's 7 winds and 10 fires. And the fires are seeing, hearing, touching, dreaming, thinking, or is he the breath of God? When the wind turns traveler and asks, in my Father's voice, have you prayed? I remember 3 things. 1, a father's love is milk and sugar. 2/3 worry, 2/3 grief. And what's left over is trimmed and leavened to make the bread the dead and the living share. And patience? That's to endure the terrible leavening and kneading. And wisdom? That's my Father's face in sleep. When the wind asks, have you prayed? I know it's only me reminding myself a flower is 1 station between Earth's wish and Earth's rapture. And blood was fire, salt, and breath long before it quickened any wand or branch, any limb that woke speaking. It's just me in the gowns of the wind, or my Father through me asking, have you found your refuge yet? Asking, are you happy? Funny, a troubled father, a happy son, the wind with a voice, and me without one. I'll go on with this poem. This is a love poem too. This is for my son. I mention in here Union Station. It's a train station in Chicago. And there's a train that runs east and west. It's called the 20th Century. And I go down to the train station every morning and have my coffee on the way to work, and I love to hear the announcements. You know, it says the 20th century is about to arrive. Everybody on board. The 20th century has just departed. And so it's kind of amazing. My son was learning piano with my sister, and she was teaching him every good boy deserves fudge. Do you know that thing? Yeah, every good boy does fine. And he'd been learning for years, and then he asked me one day, is that true, Baba? Every good boy does fine. And I thought for a while. I said, no. I said, every wise child is sad. And I know, and my sister... my sister shoved me hard, you know. She said, you're going to ruin these kids, telling them that kind of thing. But I thought hard about that, and I thought, well, it's kind of true. So I wrote this poem to, I don't know, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But it's called Every Wise Child is Sad. Every wise child is sad. As old as the stars, he's not old enough to heat his milk on the stove. Prince and a member of the grass, he believes every wind-strewn blossom is God tearing God. And the stars are leaves blown across his grandmother's lap, or the dew multiplying. Every laughing child is forgetful. Every solitary child rules the universe. As old as night itself, that is, older than his name and his mother and father's names, yet he doesn't know what a minute weighs, or is an hour a little or a lot. But of time's many hands, he can tell the bloody from the perfumed, the feathered one with claws from the hairy one wearing rings. And he knows about the goodbyes, some of them anyway. The goodbye at the door each morning, a kiss for a kiss. The goodbye at bedtime, stories and songs until it's safe to close his eyes. And maybe he's even heard about the waiting room at Union Station, where dust and echoes climb to the great skylights, accompanied by farewells of the now-going, to join the distant farewells of the long-gone, while a voice announces the departure of the 20th century for all points west. Yes, every wise child is heartbroken. A sorrowing pip. He knows the play he's called away from each evening is all that keeps naming possible in a human household. He's sure his singing to himself and his rising and falling ball are appointed by ancient laws his own heart tides obey. But he can't tell a single other what he knows. Old enough to knot his shoelaces, but not old enough to unknot them. Old enough to pray, he doesn't always know who to pray to. Old enough to know to close the window when it storms. Old enough to know the rain, given the chance, would fall on him and darken him and darken him, the way he himself colors the figures he draws, pressing so hard he tears the page. Oh, thank you. I have a friend who, a dear friend, a friend I love, who can't stand to read poetry, but I read it to him all the time. And every time we talk, we have to redefine our terms. And so he keeps me on my toes. He owns hotels, so I keep telling him that's why he hates poetry. So I wrote this as a conversation with him. It's called Preface to a Conversation. Preface to a Conversation. By home, do you mean where we start or how we live? By the dove's voice, do you mean a sodden bed of leaves or an unheated room in autumn? Or is that my voice at the window? Or has my dead brother's shirt collar begun to yellow? A dove's peeled breast could barely feed a soul. The hunger it tolls is my own inheritance. Or have I slept too long under my mother's pear trees? Have I traded my mother's tablecloth for a shadow of the falling petals? And by dream, What do you mean by dream? And if by dying I mean wins the seat between finished earth and the speaking fire, alive inside each thing, woven of dust and yearning, you may safely guess the dove's tremors are lapsed echoes of that native voice, the fire enthroned. The dove's flying away casts a shadow. Look, now a bridge, now a gate, now my hands parting the curtain to find the rest of the day. So we're talking about birds. I'll read you some bird poems. I sometimes think that one of the wonderful things that language can do is it can inflect inner space so that we experience it as something visceral. You know, if it weren't for that capacity of language, we would not believe we had anything such as inner space. So I think birds are kind of masters of space, and I'd been watching them a long time before I could write this poem. I'm not sure about this poem. Sometimes I read it and it feels true to me, and sometimes I read it and it doesn't feel true, so I don't know how I'll feel as I read it today. You know, sometimes I think birds are wonderful, and sometimes I hate them. They seem to me like little bugs with wings. But when I wrote this, I felt the opposite. This is called Praise Them. Praise them. The birds don't alter space. They reveal it. The sky never fills with any leftover flying. They leave nothing to trace. It is our own astonishment collects in chill air. Be glad. They equal their due moment, never begging, and enter ours without parting day. See how 3 birds in a winter tree make the tree bearer. 2 fly away, and new rooms open in December. Give up what you guessed about a whirring heart, the little beaks and claws, their constant hunger. We're the nervous ones. If even one of our violent number could be gentle long enough that one of them found it safe inside our finally untroubled and untroubling gaze, who wouldn't hear what singing completes us? Here's another one about the birds. This is about making Chinese characters, but these aren't real Chinese characters, so don't try to look these up or anything like that. These are my own characters. This is called A Table in the Wilderness. A table in the wilderness. I draw a window and a man sitting inside it. I draw a bird in flight above the lintel. That's my picture of thinking. If I put a woman there instead of the man, it's a picture of speaking. If I draw a second bird in the woman's lap, it's ministering. a third flying below her feet. Now it's singing. Or erase the birds, make ivy branching around the woman's ankles, clinging to her knees, and it becomes remembering. You'll have to find your own pictures, whoever you are, whatever your need. As for me, many small hands issuing from a waterfall means silence mothered me. The hours hung like fruit in night's tree means when I close my eyes and look inside me, 1,000 open eyes span the moment of my waking. Meanwhile, the clock adding a grain to a grain and not getting bigger, subtracting a day from a day and never having less, means the honey lies awake all night inside the honeycomb, wondering who its parents are. And even my death isn't my death, unless it's the unfathomed brow of a nameless face. Even my name isn't my name, except the bees assemble a table to grant a stranger light and moment in a wilderness of who and where. I was talking to a friend who writes a lot of wonderful criticism, and we were talking about the nature of metaphor, and hopelessly ignorant, I revealed myself to him many times as that. I told him I'm ignorant, and we were talking, and this is after years, and recently he said to me, "You know, Leon, you're an ignoramus." I said, "I've been trying to tell you that for years." He said, "Well, I thought you were just being humble." But one of the assumptions, I decided that the reason we have such heated arguments is one of the assumptions that I have is that metaphor isn't a literary device. He was trying to convince me that metaphor is a literary device. I understand metaphor as a way to, how do I say this? Integrate incompatible psychic contents. You know, like honeycomb and time. Like, what do they have to do with each other? Or when you make a metaphor out of them, you're trying to find some sort of integration between those two psychic realities. Like a honeycomb has a psychic reality, right? A psychological reality, an emotional reality. Time has the other one. So when you make a metaphor, you're integrating the two concepts. And he says, "Oh no, they're just words," which confused me. I don't understand. I thought words actually referred to concepts. So when you do something with words, the concepts get in. But anyway, I'm just trying to defend, I guess, my own propensity toward metaphor. Here's another one. This is called Black Petal. Black Petal. I never claimed night fathered me. That was my dead brother, talking in his sleep. I keep him under my pillow, a dear wish that colors my laughing and crying. I never said the wind, remembering nothing, leaves so many rooms unaccounted for. Only continual farewell ransoms the unmistakable fragrance our human days afford. It was my brother, little candle in the pulpit, reading out loud to all of earth from the book of night. He died too young to learn his name. Now he answers to vacant boat, burning wing, my black petal. Ask him who his mother is. He'll declare the birds have eaten the path home. But each of us joins night's ongoing story wherever night overtakes him, the heart astonished to find belonging, and thanks answering thanks. Ask if he's hungry or thirsty. He'll say he's the bread come to pass, and draw you a map to the 12 secret hips of honey. Does someone want to know the way to spring? He'll remind you the flower was never meant to survive the fruit's triumph. He says an apple's most secret cargo is the enduring odor of a human childhood, our mother's linen pressed and stored, our father's voice walking through the rooms. He says he's forgiven our sister for playing dead and making him cry those afternoons we were left alone in the house. And when clocks frighten me with their long hair, and when I spy the wind's numerous hands in the orchard unfastening, first the petals from the buds, then the perfume from the flesh, my dead brother ministers to me. His voice weighs nothing but the far years between stars in their massive dying. And I grow quiet, hearing how many of both of our tomorrows lie waiting inside it to be born. Thank you. This is called Little Round. Little round. My fool asks, do the years spell a path to later be remembered? Who's there to read them back? My death says, one bird knows the hour and suffers to house its millstone weight as song. My night watchman lies down in a room by the sea and hears the water telling out of 1,000 mouths the story behind his mother's sleeping face. My eternity shrugs and yawns. Let the stars knit and fold inside their numbered rooms. When night asks who I am, I answer, your own, and am not lonely. My loneliness, my sleepless darling, reminds herself the fruit that falls increases at the speed of the body rising to meet it. And my child, he sleeps and sleeps. And my mother, she divides the rice, today's portion from tomorrow's from ever after. And my father, he faces me and rows toward what he can't see. And my God, what have I done with my God? I'll read one more poem. I think that's, and I want to thank you for your generosity of attention. This is something I'm working on right now. This is called Poor Shadow. Poor Shadow. My shadow is trying to decide if the universe is a flowering tree or the sleep of a woman who carries, without her knowing it yet, the word at the end of the story of time. Me, I'm just waiting for evening. Then I'll know what I feel. My shadow though, is troubled. It wants to know the word the woman will speak upon waking. It wonders, does time blossom, ripen, or branch in two directions, seen and unseen? And what is flesh? Perfume? Some pollen? The very sap? Me? I don't care about that. I'm waiting for the playground to empty. Then I can call out the stations of the moon, the open book, the trumpet entombed, the silent answer. Me, I'm waiting for the leaves to travel. Then I can trade places with the wind. Then I'll remember that old story beginning with the great herds of stars at pasture. Meanwhile, my shadow grows more desperate every minute, asking, in which room of the sleepless clock do our clothes lie folded for the final journey? My shadow is crying, the bread that wakes in a house that fails. What table fathered it? It's protesting. The pillow awaiting your head is just so much cloud. Poor shadow. While I sleep, it will sit at the window all night, thinking. Dear shadow, may you hear the singing that entrances the seed of each fruit born falling. A singing without issue, becoming. Thank you very much.